Let me tell you something right now. Anybody can lead when everything's easy. When the sun's out, money's flowing, people are clapping for you, your name's trending. Anybody can lead then. That's not leadership, that's riding the wave. That's being a fan of success. But true leadership, real leadership, that happens when it's raining, when the thunder is loud, and when everything in you says quit, but you show up anyway. The secret to leading when it's tough is not talent, it's not position, it's not title, it's grit. It's that unshakable mindset that says, I don't care how hard it gets. I'm built for this. You want to know why some people fold when the pressure hits? Because they weren't leading, they were managing a situation. But when you're a leader, you don't need the conditions to be perfect. You make conditions better. You create opportunities in chaos. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a team that's losing, back against the wall. Everything's falling apart. The scoreboard's ugly. People are arguing. Some want to walk away, some already have. And there's one person who stands up, not because they feel good, not because they're the strongest, but because they know leadership is a decision, not a condition. That person doesn't wait for someone to tell them what to do. They say, follow me. I don't know how we gonna do it, but I know quitting ain't the answer. That's leadership. Now listen to me. I'm not saying it's easy. Leading when it's tough means you're the one carrying the weight when everyone else is tired. You're the one giving energy when your own soul feels dry. You're the one speaking faith when doubt is screaming in your head. But that's the price. That's the price of being called to lead. You don't get to only show up when it feels good. You show up, especially when it doesn't. Because leadership ain't about emotions, it's about commitment. You want the secret? Here it is. You lead from purpose, not from comfort. When you remember why you started, who you're doing this for, and what's at stake, you'll find strength you didn't know you had. You see, comfort is the enemy of leadership. When you're comfortable, you stop pushing. When you're comfortable, you stop growing. But when it's tough, when your back is against the wall, that's when the real you shows up. That's when the leader comes out. Let me ask you something. Do you want to be remembered as someone who gave up when it got hard, or someone who became a rock when the storm hit? Anybody can lead when the lights are bright, but can you lead when it's dark? Can you lead when you don't have the answers? Can you lead when they're doubting you, whispering behind your back, waiting for you to fail? Because that's when it counts. The best leaders, they don't just give orders, they serve. They show up early, they stay late. They listen. They get in the trenches with their people. They earn trust, not with words, but with consistency. Even when they're hurting, they lift others up. Even when they're tired, they pour into others. Even when they're afraid, they still speak with courage. That's leadership. That's strength. That's character. So let me tell you this, if you're in a tough season right now, if things aren't working the way you hope, if the pressure is building and your faith is shaking, good. Because this is your moment, not to retreat, but to rise. Not to collapse, but to climb. Tough times don't mean you're on the wrong path. They mean you're being forged. Pressure creates diamonds. Fire refines gold. In adversity reveals the leaders. So what's the secret to leading when it's tough? Keep showing up. Keep doing the work. Keep believing. And don't you dare quit on your people. Don't you dare quit on your mission. And above all, Don't you quit on yourself. Because someone is watching you. Someone is learning from your grind. Someone is being inspired by your refusal to fold. You are the thermostat, not the thermometer. You don't reflect the temperature. You set it. In the moments when it's hardest to lead, that's when your legacy is being written. Not in the wins, not in the celebrations, but in the late nights, the hard talks, the lonely moments when you say, I will not give in. I will lead through this because that's who I am. And if you keep going, I promise, you won't just survive the storm, you'll become the reason others believe they can survive theirs. That's the secret. Now go out there and lead like it matters, because it does. Leading from purpose, not comfort, is the foundation of unshakable leadership. Comfort is easy, it's predictable, it feels good, but nothing grows in comfort. No great leader ever rose from a place of ease. Purpose, on the other hand, is demanding. Purpose will pull you out of bed when your body says sleep. Purpose will push you forward when your mind says stop. It doesn't care about how you feel. It only cares about what you were called to do. Most people make decisions based on how they feel in the moment. If it's raining, they stay in. If it's hard, they back off. If it hurts, they quit. That's a comfort-based mindset. But when you leave from purpose, you stop asking, is this easy? And you start asking, is this necessary? You stop chasing comfort and you start chasing meaning. You don't look for the path of least resistance. You look for the path that brings the most impact. Purpose doesn't need applause. Purpose doesn't need approval. Purpose doesn't shrink just because the road gets rocky. In fact, it grows louder when things get harder. And that's the difference. When a leader is driven by comfort, they disappear in tough times. They start protecting themselves. They start making excuses. But when a leader is driven by purpose, they show up even when the odds are stacked against them. They show up bleeding. They show up broken, but they still show up. Comfort tells you to wait for the right time. Purpose says the time is now. Comfort says, take it easy. Purpose says, give it everything. The truth is, comfort will give you a temporary high, but purpose will give you a permanent legacy. Comfort is momentary. Purpose is eternal. The world doesn't need more leaders who are comfortable. The world needs leaders who are connected to something deeper. Something that can't be shaken when things get real. Purpose is what keeps you standing when the ground is shaking under your feet. It's what fuels your fire when the wind is trying to blow you out. It's what whispers keep going when nobody's clapping, nobody's watching, and everything inside of you wants to run. Leadership is not about how smooth the ride is. It's about staying committed to the destination even when the wheels come off. And the only thing strong enough to keep you in the game when life hits hard is purpose. That deep reason, that calling, that why that won't let you quit. When you're leading from that place, the storms don't scare you because you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Purpose gives you clarity. It gives you direction. It gives you resilience. People who leave from comfort avoid hard conversations. People who leave from purpose step into them. People who leave from comfort hide when they fail. People who leave from purpose take ownership and grow. People who leave from comfort follow the crowd. People who leave from purpose, people feel it. They see it in how you move, how you speak, how you respond under pressure. And the reason purpose-led leaders create real change is because they're not trying to look good. They're trying to do good. They're not chasing the spotlight. They're carrying the torch. They're not worried about losing. They're committed to leading no matter what. Consistency beats emotion every time. Emotions are unstable, unpredictable, and temporary. 1 minute you feel like giving your all, the next you want to disappear. That's the nature of emotion. It's based on circumstance, on mood, on what's happening around you. But consistency doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't ask if you're motivated. It doesn't need permission. It shows up day after day, no matter what. Leadership that's driven by emotion is dangerous. It's inconsistent. One day the leader is on fire, full of vision, energy, and drive. The next, they're quiet, disconnected, and hard to find. That kind of leadership builds confusion, not confidence. People don't follow titles, they follow patterns. They follow who you are consistently. When your team sees you show up with the same standard, the same discipline, the same energy, even when things are going wrong, they trust you. You become their anchor. Emotions make you reactive. Consistency makes you reliable. When you leave from emotion, you say things you didn't mean. You make choices you later regret. You let the temporary decide the permanent. But when you leave from consistency, you operate from principle. You make decisions rooted in values, not vibes. You stay true to the mission, regardless of how you feel that day. The truth is, your feelings will lie to you. They'll tell you you're not good enough, that it's not worth it, that nobody's watching. But discipline doesn't listen to feelings. Discipline says, this is what I said I would do, and I'm doing it. That's leadership. Not the loud, emotional moments, but the quiet, steady ones. The early mornings, the late nights, the thankless tasks, the private decisions that no one will ever see, but everyone will feel. You don't rise to the level of your feelings, you fall to the level of your habits. What are your habits when nobody's watching? What do you do when it's boring, when it's tough, when it's lonely? That's where consistency is built. That's where great leaders are forged. Not in one emotional speech, but in 1,000 unglamorous moments of follow through. Consistency isn't sexy. It's not exciting. But it builds empire, it creates momentum, and it earns respect that emotion never can. Because anyone can show up when they feel inspired. Anyone can perform when the energy is high and the music's playing. But who shows up when it's quiet? Who delivers when it's inconvenient? That's the leader people remember. That's the leader people trust. And the real secret, when you stay consistent, emotions start to work for you. You build confidence. You build rhythm. You start to feel proud, not because it was easy, but because you stayed the course. Your energy changes. Your presence shifts. People start to lean in, not because you hype them up, but because your life preaches louder than your words ever could. Being consistent doesn't mean being perfect. It means being faithful. It means choosing commitment over comfort. It means doing what needs to be done even when no one's clapping. Even when your emotions are screaming, quit. You keep doing the right thing because that's who you are. Emotion might start the journey, but only consistency will finish it. True leaders rise when everything falls, when the systems break down, when the plan fails, when fear creeps in and the room goes silent. That's when real leadership begins. It's easy to lead when the path is smooth, when the applause is loud, and when everything is working. But the measure of a leader isn't taken during the easy times. It's taken in the chaos, in the pressure, in the moment when everyone else is looking for an exit. Leadership is not about status or control. It's about standing firm when the world shakes, when morale is low, when the team is scattered, and when the future looks uncertain. A true leader doesn't blend into the fear. They become the foundation others can stand on. They don't have all the answers. They don't pretend to, but they have presence, they have poise, and most importantly, they have the courage to keep going when others stop. When everything falls, people start looking for someone to follow. Not someone with a title, someone with resilience. Someone who doesn't flinch under pressure. Someone who steps into the fire when others are backing away. The reason true leaders rise in hard times is because they've trained for it. Not always with words, but with mindset, with discipline, with a decision they made long before things got tough, that quitting was not an option and fear would not run the show. You see, adversity doesn't create character, it reveals it. When things fall apart, your habits show. Your mindset shows. If you've been leading from comfort, the cracks will show. But if you've been leading from principle, your strength will surface. True leaders aren't built on hype. They're built in the unseen hours, in the sacrifice, in the private moments of preparation that nobody saw. That's why when the pressure hits, they don't fold. They rise. Rising in chaos doesn't mean shouting louder. It doesn't mean pretending everything's okay. It means being the calm in the storm. It means holding your standard when everything else feels unstable. It means speaking life into people who have forgotten what hope feels like. And that takes more than talent. That takes guts. That takes heart. That takes a deep-rooted conviction that says, we're not going to let this moment define us. We're going to define the moment. When everything falls, most people focus on survival. They shrink. They play it safe. They wait for things to go back to normal. But true leaders don't wait, they create. They don't freeze up, they step up. They see failure not as the end, but as the opening for reinvention. They adapt, they reimagine, they stay steady so others can start to believe again. In the face of pressure, most people become reactive. True leaders become intentional. They take control of their energy. They ask better questions. They focus on what they can do, not what they can't. And they lead not just with strategies, but with spirit, with presence, with vision. Because when everything is falling, vision becomes oxygen. People don't need more facts. They need belief. They need someone who sees past the rubble and still speaks about the rebuild. And that voice, that posture, that perspective, that's what separates a leader from everyone else. True leaders aren't proven by how they celebrate wins. They're proven by how they carry weight, by how they show up when things are falling apart. When excuses are easy, they choose excellence. When doubt is loud, they speak clarity. When fear spreads, they hold the line. Not because they're fearless, but because they refuse to let fear dictate their moves. You don't need a title to take responsibility. Leadership is not about position. It's about posture. It's about how you show up when there's a problem. It's about what you choose to do when something needs to be done. There are people with titles who hide, who wait, who avoid accountability. And there are people with no title at all who step in, speak up, and take the weight because they know leadership isn't granted, it's chosen. The lie people believe is that they need permission to lead, that they need the job title, the office, the recognition before they can start acting like a leader. But the truth is, if you're waiting to be called a leader before you lead, you're already behind. The real ones take initiative. They don't wait for someone to say it's their job. They make it their job. They see the gap and they fill it. They see the need and they meet it. That's what leaders do. Taking responsibility means owning more than your share. It means being the one who says, I've got it, when everyone else hesitates. It's about standing in the middle of the mess and saying, we'll figure this out. No excuses, no blame games. Just ownership, just action. That doesn't require authority. That requires courage. That requires maturity. That requires a mindset that says, even if it's not my fault, it's still my problem. Leadership begins the moment you stop pointing fingers and start finding solutions. It's not about being right. It's about doing right. It's not about having control. It's about bringing clarity. Every day, you have the opportunity to lead in how you speak, how you move, how you show up. You don't need a badge for that. You don't need to be the bystander to what's broken. You'll take responsibility for fixing it. There are people in the room with all the authority and none of the initiative. And there are others in the background, no spotlight, no label, but they're the reason things hold together. Because they lead with their character, they lead with their consistency, they lead with their choices, and people feel it even if they don't say it. That's the kind of leadership that changes cultures, not because it demands power, but because it earns respect. You can change the temperature in a room just by how you carry yourself. You can elevate the standard on a team just by how you work. You can set a tone of excellence just by refusing to cut corners. And none of that requires a title. It only requires a decision to be responsible, even when it's hard, even when no one else is stepping up. Real leadership means saying, I'm not waiting for someone else to take care of this. I'm going to own it. And when you operate like that long enough, the title comes. But by then, it doesn't matter, because you weren't chasing status. You were chasing impact. You weren't trying to look important. You were trying to be useful. That's what separates leaders from everyone else. Responsibility is not about control. It's about care. It's about investing yourself fully into the outcome. It's about refusing to detach or disengage. It's about seeing yourself as a steward of what's in front of you, whether you're in charge of it or not. That attitude creates gravity. People trust those who take responsibility. They follow people who don't just talk about what should be done, they do it quietly, consistently. Set the tone. Be the thermostat, not the thermometer. A thermometer reacts to the temperature in the room. It takes in the atmosphere and reflects it back. But a thermostat sets the temperature. It defines the environment. That's what real leaders do. They don't absorb the chaos. They don't mirror the negativity. They don't wait for someone else to bring energy, order, or focus. They bring it themselves. They decide what the room is going to feel like. They choose the standard and they hold it. When pressure hits, most people look around to figure out how they should respond. They let the environment control them. If the team is stressed, they become stressed. If everyone's frustrated, they join the frustration. That's reaction, not leadership. That's moving with the crowd instead of moving the crowd. The strongest leaders know that energy is contagious, and they take full responsibility for the energy they carry into a room. A leader who sets the tone doesn't wait to feel good to do good. They don't rely on conditions to determine their effort. They operate from values, not vibes. That means when things get tense, they bring calm. When the room is filled with doubt, they speak belief. When others are silent in fear, they communicate with clarity and conviction. They don't shift with the mood, they shape it. They walk in already decided about who they're going to be, regardless of how the situation unfolds. This kind of leadership doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the steady presence in a crisis. Sometimes it's the unshakable standard when everyone else is compromising. But make no mistake, it's powerful. Because everyone around you is watching, even when they say they're not. They're feeding off your cues. They're reading your tone. They're following your example, whether consciously or not. Being a thermostat means you hold yourself to a higher internal standard. You're not just working hard when people are watching. You're consistent behind the scenes. You carry your own weather. Your discipline sets the rhythm. Your presence becomes a signal to others about what is and isn't acceptable, what is and isn't possible. When people come into contact with you, they should feel the shift, not because you told them, but because you showed them. This mindset doesn't just apply to teams, it applies to families, to classrooms, to relationships, to every room you walk into. Every room has a tone. Every space has a rhythm. Most people just conform to it, but you weren't made to conform. You were made to lead. You were made to step into situations and elevate them. That starts with your own attitude, your own voice, your own actions. You set the tone through consistency, through focus, through intentionality. If you let the room determine who you are, you'll always be playing defense. But if you decide who you are, before you walk in on offense. You walk in with purpose. That doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you bring strength to it. It means you bring light into the dark, order into the disorder, belief into the fear. That's what a thermostat does. It regulates, it stabilizes, it influences without demanding attention. You don't need to be the loudest person in a room to set the tone. You just need to be the most grounded, the most consistent, the most intentional. You need to know who you are and what you stand for, so when things around you shift, you don't. When pressure rises, you remain. When the energy drops, you lift it. When distractions pull at others, you stay locked in. That's tone-setting leadership. Not reactive, but proactive. Not emotional, but principled. Not pulled by the moment, but driven by mission.